This time on War Junk, we investigate one of the most iconic World War I battlefields in Europe, Vimy Ridge. First, we take to the sky.
You can see the distinct zigzag pattern of a German trench.
Then we go underground where no film crew has gone before.
It is a completely unsanitized environment.
It pushes our team to the limit.
Trying my best to shoot, keep my balance. You can't stand up.
And we look to solve mysteries etched in the walls around Vimy. Can we connect the past to the present?
They took the time to leave what could have been their last mark.
This is War Junk, Vimy Ridge.
I'm Professor David O'Keefe.
And I'm history buff and filmmaker Wayne Abbott.
With our team, we travel the globe searching for war junk.
Remnants, artifacts, anything left over on the battlefield.
Some big, some small.
All with a story to tell.
And a mystery or two to solve along the way.
For an iconic story like Vimy Ridge, we decided that we wanted to see Vimy first from the air.
Oh my Lord.
Whoa.
This is the way to see Vimy Ridge. I have chills. I have literally chills flying over it right now.
You can understand when you fly over the ridge just how important this was. It's the most dominating feature in the entire area, and you'd understand why the Germans would fight so hard to keep it and why it cost so much in blood for the Allies to take it. The Battle of Vimy Ridge is considered one of Canada's greatest military triumphs during the First World War. A ferocious battle, it was fought over 4 days between April 9th and 12th of 1917. The fight for the ridge was just one sector of the Allied attack around the French town of Arras. Vimy Ridge was the northernmost point of the Allied push into German lines, and it was the first time that all 4 of Canada's divisions fought side by side in one battle.
Seeing Vimy from the air puts the entire battle into perspective. We have walked many World War I battlefields, but few have the scars of battle quite like Vimy Ridge.
Some parts of it look like it's never been touched since the battle.
Yeah, a lot of it hasn't. I mean, this land was given by the French as a gift to Canada for their sacrifice here. And as a result, it was turned almost instantly into a memorial.
Although Vimy Memorial Park represents only 10% of the actual 1917 battlefield, this is unique land, for it has changed very little over the last 100 years. From above, you can still see the pockmarks from the massive artillery barrages that preceded the attack and actually went in to support the infantry when they did attack.
That's the last German trench line.
Wow.
Right down there, you can see the distinct zigzag pattern of a German trench. As soon as the Canadians pass this, they continue to push on to the crest of the ridge. As soon as you reach that point, you know you had taken it.
The Canadian troops finally captured the top on April 12th, and the battle for Vimy Ridge came to an end, but with a heavy price.
The Canadian Memorial has 11,000 names on it.
Before we land, we take one last moment over the memorial.
Where it's positioned, it really is the ultimate sign of victory for the Canadians and the Allies in the Battle of Vimy Ridge.
Seeing Vimy from the air was unbelievable, but that was only the beginning of our journey. It's an incredible opportunity for the team to come here and investigate Vimy Memorial Park and try to find the true essence of the battle through what's been left behind. We now have a meeting with a person who knows more about one key aspect of the Battle of Vimy Ridge than anyone else.
Wayne and I are meeting Philip Robinson.
Said he'd meet us at the visitor center?
Yeah, right here. And Philip is a former lieutenant colonel in the Royal Engineers, and he's probably the foremost expert on the underground war at Vimy.
Well, David,
morning.
Nice to see you again.
It's no surprise that when we approached Philip in the visitor center parking lot,
Hello, Philip.
Wayne, good to see you again.
that he already had his information spread out on a picnic table.
This plan here is just 1 kilometer sector of the tunneling area we have here at Vimy. And what we're looking at is a warren of tunnels. These are various German tunnels, and this is the British, subsequently Canadian side.
Here was just a 1-kilometer snippet of the entire 10-kilometer long Vimy sector, and it was absolutely honeycombed with mine shafts of all types.
What visitors see, and most people actually think about in terms of the Great War, is trenches. But actually, things went underground after the early stages in terms of dugouts and subway passages for people and so on. But also, there was, of course, a war fought underground along quite a lot of the front.
As Philip explains, the underground war was a major part of the battle and vastly complex. Some tunnels were dug as deep as 30 meters or 100 feet under Vimy Ridge. These fighting tunnels were sometimes used to set off explosives under enemy lines. The results of this subterranean war can still be seen on the surface today.
Once this is in place, it's almost impossible for the enemy miners to get through. So then they concentrated on the construction of subway systems.
The name subways was given to the tunnels dug about 8 meters or 27 feet underground. These were used to move men and munitions up to the front lines.
Up here we have the Goodman subway, and this was the longest of all. It goes back from here another kilometer. It was passage from the reserve lines area forward into the forward lines without observation by the enemy, relatively safe. These are about 8 meters below the ground, so pretty well proof from shell fire. What I'd like to do is take you to a place not normally visible to the public.
We're very excited to follow Philip into the restricted area of Vimy Memorial Park. We're getting in to the off-limits area of Vimy Ridge. But imagine what this would have looked like during the battle.
Oh yeah, everything we're in right now would have been absolutely pulverized, would have been death and destruction.
Once in the restricted forest, Philip takes us down a small path.
I take it the area that we're on has been cleaned of munitions.
No, not at all. It's thick with munitions.
The forest is full of unexploded ordnance, but some of the war remnants safely pulled from the ground still lie scattered along the path.
You see some of it here.
Oh, look at these.
And these are cases from shrapnel shells.
Cases. So no
The
explosives
cases,
left.
no, there's no, all the explosives being taken away.
Walking further along the path, we're curious about where Philip is taking us and what he wants us to see.
We'll go up into this area here where, well, something I think will be of great interest to you.
Really, right down here.
Getting excited, Dave?
Yeah, I am.
Dave, where's he taking us?
I don't know, but it looks like some sort of hole. Oh no, wait a second. I see something covered up down here. And now, in this little hollow, in this forest, we see a hatch. And of course, that could only mean one thing.
What we have is, in fact, the entrance to a shaft down into the Goodman subway.
Really?
That's right.
This is the Goodman subway.
You do the honors with the keys.
Whoa! Look at that.
Holy.
It's a bit of a way, isn't it?
It's about, well, it's 27 feet deep. It's about 8.5 meters. But this connects to the very deep fighting system, and it should be possible to get the film crew down there
Really?
into the deep fighting system.
Now, has anybody
which
ever been down there to film that part before?
never been filmed commercially, no.
Well, this is going to be great. Philip told us that we're going to go farther than anyone has ever been under Vimy Ridge, with the exception of his own team.
What we will uncover and what we will see, we have no idea. After exploring Vimy Ridge from the air, the War Junk team has a rare opportunity to investigate Vimy below the surface.
Tunnel day.
Big time. Today is our first tunnel expedition, and this is phase 1 of what Wayne and I plan to do over the next couple of days.
Can't believe we're going to investigate the Goodman subway.
Yeah, amazing, eh? To think that we're going to be walking in the same footsteps as the men who attacked Vimy Ridge 100 years ago.
Hi.
How are you?
So, you're David?
Yes, I am. That's Wayne.
Wayne? Hi, Andy.
The expedition leader on the first phase is Andy Hawkins, who is a former British Army demolition specialist. So we were in pretty safe hands.
Okay, what we'll do is we'll go down to the head of the Goodman shaft. I'll give you a brief on the entire environment, the archaeological environment down there, and about the UXOs that are in there and all the rest of it, because it is a completely unsanitized environment.
UXOs are unexploded ordnance left behind from the war. This makes the trip more challenging, but we still have a clear objective. There we are. All right, let's get set up.
We really want to see what is down there to actually give us a sense of what it was used for during the Battle of Vimy Ridge.
Okay, so the boys are gonna get rigged up now.
Game time.
Just be mindful of your environment.
Andy is part of the Duran Group, a UK-based tunneling team that has spent over 2 decades exploring the tunnels under Vimy Ridge.
If at any time you feel uncomfortable, just tell me and we'll come out, take a breather, go back in.
We've investigated other tunnel systems on other battlefields around the world, so we know that there's always a danger when you do go below ground. See you down there, Dave.
See you in a bit.
It's cool. It's really cool. I'm down.
Walking into the same footsteps as the men from the Canadian Corps 100 years ago. There is no feeling like this. What we planned to do when we reached the bottom was start a reconnaissance down in the tunnel.
Okay, I'm in the skinny part now, when I can see it opening up.
During the battle, the Goodman subway was a full 1.2 kilometers long, enabling the fighting troops to get to the front lines underground in relative safety. The section that we are exploring today is only a few hundred meters. Much of the rest has collapsed over time. Immediately, we are transported back to the first day of the battle in April 1917.
If you can imagine a man in full uniform, rifle, weapon, helmet, all his kit, this is big enough for him to come through.
The remaining tunnel is in excellent condition, much as it would have been during the battle.
The Goodman subway was actually built based on the lessons learned from previous battles. It was difficult to get men across no man's land or even their own lines on the surface without exposing them to enemy artillery and having them killed or wounded. So the idea now was to create subways underneath, so in the heat of battle, they could be ushered up to the front without having to risk being wounded on the way up. As we start our investigation, one of the first things we notice is the unexploded ordnance spread across the floor.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 grenades here, I think.
They're rifle grenades.
They're rather unique to see. I guess we have to be very careful where we step.
Yeah, just stay off the grenades.
Try to.
As we carefully investigate the tunnel further, we're hoping to find evidence that will show these tunnels were more than just a means of shuffling men to the front lines.
What part of the tunnel are we getting into now?
Well, we're coming into what was one of the brigade headquarters.
So this wasn't just a transport corridor, but a vital part of the underground fight for Vimy Ridge. This is the brigade headquarters that was used during the battle. I mean, you can imagine what it was like in here with the commander barking orders left, right, and center, runners coming in, taking messages, and of course the radios chattering in the background. Oh my God, this is the center of the Vimy battle in this sector. As we move deeper into the Goodman subway, we find more evidence of the complexity of this tunnel system. Things like storage facilities, signals rooms, mortar pits, and we even discover an unusually large room cut deep into the rock.
What is this?
What we're standing in now was the main supply for water for the troops up at the front line.
Really?
Yeah.
So this is one just big water reservoir?
Yes.
It was really almost like an underground fortress, a replica of the trench works that you would have on the surface within the relative safety of 20 feet below ground.
Now, Dave and I are hoping to find artifacts that tell the personal stories of war. As we walk towards what would have been the front lines, we come across something extraordinary.
I just noticed I'm standing right here. And I just see it must be, what, 10 names here?
At least. Looks like Norton or Morton from the 52nd Battalion.
It's chilling to stand in the same spot that these young soldiers did nearly 100 years ago, signing their names into the wall of the tunnel.
Campbell, 5th Canadian Mounted Rifles, they were actually in this subway during the attack on April 9th.
And there's one down here, Dave, look.
Yeah, you can see Hardy from the 42nd Battalion, Black Watch again, and then it looks like RAAF, Roflab. And it looks like A Company, 116th Battalion Canadians, and it looks like in France.
Then a few meters down the tunnel,
Dave.
Yeah. Oh my God.
a veritable wall of remembrance.
Totally amazing.
These consisted of the names, sometimes the regiment numbers of the men who were down in this tunnel. You really felt as if you were walking with ghosts at that particular moment. We know we have found a great story to investigate. The names on the walls of the Goodman subway.
That was an incredible experience.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Talk about stepping back to 1917. And then the names.
The names, I mean, there's just so many names. We documented as many as we could.
It'd be absolutely incredible now to reach out with the research team and see if we can find family members.
After a day of being underground at Vimy, I was actually relieved that we got a lead to go meet somebody just about 5 kilometers from the battlefield.
Wayne and I were to meet a woman by the name of Valerie, a Canadian expat who lives in the area, and we were told that she would be able to show us some artifacts related to the Battle of Vimy Ridge.
Good morning.
Well, hello.
We were thinking that possibly she had a smaller artifact with a name or ID number on it.
During the First World War, this was actually used as a Red Cross hospital, and if you come a little bit further back, you can see, here you can make out the Red Cross.
What I didn't realize is that the artifact she was showing us was the wall in front of us.
I guess these things are starting to fade away with the sun, with time, and everything else?
The sun with time, with the weather. I mean, it's a beautiful day today, but this part of France is actually very cold and wet.
Look at this.
What was really incredible was when she showed us the names that were etched on the walls. So this actually has Canadian soldiers during the war.
Oh, yes,
this
of course. You had officers and men quartered in the fields around here, and in the fall of 1916, when they're preparing the attacks, this is in the area that they would have been in.
This is the area?
And of course, obviously, lots of men would have been coming to this hospital if they were wounded. You can make out some other names, for example.
Oh, yeah, look at this.
J.C., this is 1918.
You know, with the amount of men that were through here, I mean, are there other areas like this?
Yes, there are. That interesting?
Oh, yeah, let's go.
Okay.
On war junk shoots, we never know what's going to happen. While we were shooting with Valerie, all of a sudden, this lady comes out and starts to tell us about the history of the place.
C'était vraiment un endroit très stratégique pour protéger les blessés.
Mais oui.
Voilà, qui arrivaient en masse.
Madame Derville has lived here all her life, and she is eager to tell us about the history of her chateau during the war.
So this dates from 1725.
Yeah.
And I guess the top part then has been rebuilt since the war, because that's what they were saying, that the roof was gone.
But then she wanted us to come inside and show us something very special.
She had mentioned that.
She pulls out these boxes of slides passed down from the family that once owned the estate. These were done, I guess, during the war, and it's, oh my God, look at the photos. Oh, they're done on glass.
What even surprised me more was that there was 2 images on each glass slide, which means these were 3D images from World War I.
C'est très vivant. Ce sont des morts, malheureusement, ou des blessés, mais ça exprime exactement.
I mean, this looks like a French tank that's been knocked out in a trench not too far from here.
These were maybe some of the most amazing images I had ever seen, taken 100 years ago.
There are 6 boxes containing at least 30 photos in each box. So we're looking at almost 180 photos that probably haven't been seen since the end of the war. The challenge now is to go through all these photos to see if by chance we can find one that gives us a new image of Vimy Ridge. But this will have to wait. Our next stop is just a few kilometers away, near the town of Souchez. Now this is a spectacular remnant.
Yeah, this is a church from the 16th century.
Well, this is quite something, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the result of the fighting that took place to take all of the high ground in May of 1915. But what I want to show you is actually about the Canadians, and it's on the inside. The Canadians arrived here in the fall of 1916. They're in the back lines preparing for the Battle of Vimy Ridge.
By the time the Canadians arrived here, this place was already in ruins.
Oh, yes, yeah. They're going back and forth doing raids and so on and so forth in the month of March. And at some point, they must have come here. Maybe it was a rest stop, maybe it was a field hospital, but they left their names.
For a cinematographer, the ruins of war can be quite beautiful to shoot. But seeing the names etched into the stone makes this place a much more personal type of memorial.
So, O.E. McMahon, the 54th Canadian Battalion from BC.
Yeah.
BC Keeping, PEI.
There were names from right across Canada.
So here we have somebody from Toronto named W.H. Page with his number.
Wow, this is great.
The fascinating part here was that not only did you have unit names and the names of the soldiers, but in some cases you actually had their regimental numbers, which of course makes it a lot easier to trace their history. The mission is to go in and research these names, to find out who these men were, where they were from, and what happened to them.
Well, the research team gave us 3 good leads for the church.
Okay, what do we have?
Well, they're looking into W.H. Page from Toronto, Ian Bird, who was with the Princess Pats, and then a BC Keeping from PEI.
It would be wonderful to find one family to bring over here to connect with their World War I roots.
Today, we continue our investigation under Vimy Ridge.
Here we are.
We are going deep into the fighting tunnels, and because of how treacherous these tunnels are,
I mean, I'll be honest, I'm quite nervous about today.
we've decided that I will do this one on my own with a skeleton crew.
Hey, the boys.
When we arrive, we meet today's team leader from the Duran Group, Nick Pryor.
Ready for day 2?
Yeah.
He's one of the first people since the war to explore the deep fighting tunnels at Vimy Ridge.
We haven't been down there for 10 years to inspect some of those areas. We need to go down to see if conditions have changed.
Our objective today is to follow the Duran Group down into one of the deepest systems under Vimy Ridge. It's called the Laffoley system. Our route will take us through the Goodman subway to the Laffoley tunnel system, then across to the Grange subway, over 1 kilometer underground. And along the way, a very important and risky mission.
We have a camouflage charge down there. We don't know what condition that's in.
A camouflage is an explosive charge designed to destroy an enemy tunnel with an underground blast.
The Duran Group 20 to 25 years ago came across an unexploded camouflage charge that was buried deep in the Laffoley system. Even though they took the detonator away back in the 90s, there's no telling how this charge has deteriorated over the last decade.
Can we actually get up fairly close to the charge?
I hopefully will be able to take you in there. Depends, it's really tight.
So to assess the integrity of the camouflage charge, you have to actually get up there.
There's no other way.
7, 8 stories below the ground. We're going to be coming up against an unexploded charge. The fact that we're going to be in spaces as narrow as 18 inches.
It's going to be a hell of a challenge.
Getting rigged up, I was probably the most nervous ever on any expedition on our show.
Good
Very
stuff.
confident. As I descended the ladder,
Okay, here we go.
wasn't like the day before. I really had to calm myself.
There we are.
While I'm down below, Philip has plans for David.
Right, well, what we'll do now, David, is I've got here a map in which the tunnels are plotted against the actual map of the forest, and we'll track where they're proceeding underground and beneath us.
We begin our investigation at the entrance to the Laffoley system.
We need to look out for the roof, see if there's been any major collapses, because this bit is unstable. So we're now at the top of the incline that leads down into the deep system. Actually, we have had a bit of a collapse since we were last in.
The way has to be cleared before we can proceed. We had to scramble down a steep slope, like a water slide made of rocks, from basically 20 feet to 80 feet below ground in a very short period of time. If this was only the first 100 feet of our tunnel experience, how are we going to get through the rest of the day? Nick took us deeper into what is a fighting tunnel.
Bit of a low section.
The Laffoley fighting tunnels were constructed much differently than the subways above. Much more narrow, deeper under the ridge, running laterally along German lines, and sometimes dramatically changing levels.
Probably at 50-degree angle.
50-degree angle, he thinks. Trying my best to shoot, keep my balance. You can't stand up. And it's just straight up.
They get into what was a higher level tunnel that started off in the woods back there and then plunges down again and forks out in two directions.
Forks out in two directions.
We finally come to one end of the Laffoley tunnel system. It's shocking to think we would have only been a few feet from German lines on the other side of the wall.
It was a listening warfare. The men sitting down here, listening. No activity at all.
So they were just listening to see if the Germans were digging closer to the British lines.
So if they needed to do something to stop them, because the last thing they wanted was the Germans breaking in, finding the subways, knowing this big attack was being planned to bring men up underground.
We backtrack to the main tunnel system, moving laterally under no man's land.
Wayne, this is the best bit of rail line you can see intact in the whole system. So your little trolleys with the rubber wheels, they would be sitting, the rubber wheels between these two pieces, on the main track timber there and running along on there quietly on the wood.
Most times when you think of mining, you think of metal tracks with metal wheels and these little trolleys being pushed back and forth. But this was World War I underground warfare.
It was quiet warfare.
I tried to put myself into the position of a soldier who was down in this tunnel system nearly 100 years ago. Everything had to be done at a quiet level. You couldn't carry on a conversation because any noise could alert the Germans, who may only be a few feet on the other side of the tunnel wall.
Then we arrive at the area where the unexploded charge is located.
This was one of the most heavily mined sections of the tunnel system. In the autumn of 1916, the Germans were moving forward and tunneling, and the British tried to stop this activity. 28th of November 1916, we blew, charged some 12,000 pounds. When you look at 172 War Diary, in the early part of December, Germans 30 feet away, working. And then a few days later, Germans 25 feet away, still coming forward. Tunnel that we're going into, to where the camouflage charge is, because they knew the Germans were really close, and they were worried, really worried about a breakthrough.
As we approach the camouflage chamber, Nick calls a halt.
We're now going to call Andy forward, our explosive expert, just to get in that chamber and see if anything's happened since 10 years ago.
There is nothing for Nick and I to do but wait, unaware that Dave and Philip are just above us.
This mine would have been blown about November 1916. You're now standing absolutely above a camouflage chamber that the support team will probably be just about getting into
They'll
now.
just be reaching this now.
That's right.
So what's it like in there?
The air is thinner, but more than anything, it's claustrophobic going
This
through.
plays on my biggest fear. I try to put it out of my mind as Nick goes to see how Andy is doing.
What are you seeing? He's just inspecting the stack.
Yes, so Andy's right up near the charge.
Have you done, Andy?
Okay, you can come on up if you want.
Wayne?
Yep.
Actually, if you come up, there is room to pass at this point.
Moving through the tunnel gives me the feeling like I'm a soldier in 1917, moving towards German lines.
It's very narrow, maybe about 2 feet right now. I still have no clue whether or not I'll get all the way in to see the explosives. It's just so narrow. Okay. Oh, okay, and how's it look?
The mine charge is looking good.
Good. We're talking like 100 years later.
Yeah.
Basically, it's sitting there the way it was when it was first put.
Yeah.
I'm excited here. Let's just crawl in.
I guess I'm at ground zero right now.
Well, ground zero of a kind, but remember the charge down there, which is about 800 pounds, about 350 kilos of explosive, is not designed to break surface. It's designed to wreck an enemy tunnel.
Although we're relatively safe, the danger is great for the guys below.
Oh, very much so.
There it is. Wow. I don't know if I should touch it, but since they think it's safe, there should be probably 30 or so bags. This stuff has been sitting here since the Battle of Vimy Ridge in 1917, or even earlier.
This crude funnel.
Yeah.
So was the sound piece, the listening earphone, connected onto brass fitting, the 2-inch air hose. Coming right back here, we found a clip of 5 bullets. There's no other reason to have that there other than they were expecting a potential breakthrough.
Then something happened. This little tunnel started to kind of wear on me. The air was very thin, it got very warm, and that's when I knew it's okay, that I had to get out of that tunnel.
It takes me a while to regain my composure.
It was tough. That little cubbyhole was so tight and so small. I just had a panic attack. I don't know how these guys did it during the war, to be down here all of this time and in those tight, confined spaces.
We have only made it a third of the way through the tunnel system, and the decision is made to get to the grain subway as soon as possible.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. We're finished. We get the worst of it.
Better at the end. My legs are burning. My back is sore.
Ah, you'll be glad. The end is nigh.
Good. We make it?
Well done. With some feet. This is bringing us into the Grange.
You did it.
Hey, Dave.
You did it. Welcome back.
That was the toughest thing I think I've ever shot. It was just tough. I mean, physically tough. And it just goes to show how hardy these men were.
It's a fantastic piece of engineering when you think it's all done by hand.
Navigating this system today, 100 years after the battle, is hard enough. But I feel for the men who fought and lived and died down there. Well, Dave, this is an incredible day.
Oh yeah, it's amazing when you think about it. We've got 2 families coming all the way from Canada to walk the hallowed ground here at Vimy.
But first, we need to stop back at Madame Derville's chateau to have a closer look at those 3D slides.
Comment allez-vous?
David and I wanted to spend the time to go through every photo in her collection.
Oh, merci.
Our objective was to find anything to do with the Battle of Vimy Ridge.
This was a collection from the entire war. We were finding photos from various different battlefields, from Verdun to the Somme. We probably went through half the collection, and we're not really feeling confident we would find something different. But then, I picked up one specific slide. Dave.
Yeah?
Look at this one.
God, it's a Vimy Memorial.
Vimy Memorial in 3D.
Get a better view.
Yeah, it could have been when it was being built. No, I think this is a 3D image from the day it opened. The image showed the post-war unveiling of the Vimy Memorial. So just look online to see if this actual photo
I will.
has been posted.
That definitely is one rare artifact.
We did it. That's what we wanted to do. We wanted to find a new image of Vimy. Surprisingly, it's not the battle, but the next best thing.
Now it's time to meet a family who has traveled from Canada all the way to Vimy Ridge.
The first person we met is Sandy Stewart, the grandson of Ben Keeping. He's the soldier who etched his name into the wall of the old church.
You must be Sandy.
Yes, you must be David.
Yes, I am, and this is Wayne.
Hi, Sandy. How are you? Pleasure. I'm so glad you could come over.
Well, it's great to be here.
We didn't know what Sandy knew about Ben Keeping's war experiences.
My grandfather died 7 years before I was born, so I never really had a chance to talk about his war experience, but I know he was a medical student at McGill when the war broke out, and he joined up with the Canadian General Hospital unit from McGill. And then in March of 1917, according to the records, he asked to be transferred to an artillery unit, the number 2 siege battery.
And what was the reason that he wanted to go to the number 2?
He had 3 other brothers who had also signed up, and he actually had a brother who was with the number 2, so possibly that's why.
So we have found something of your grandfather's.
But the thing is, it's a few kilometers from here, so we have to make a bit of a journey.
Okay.
You ready?
Well, I've come this far, let's go.
All right. Sandy really had no clue what was in store for him, particularly when we stopped at the old church and we introduced him to Valerie.
Hello.
Bonjour.
Nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you.
Valerie, of course, had helped us tremendously with our research, and we felt it was important that these two meet.
That became a ruin in May of 1915 following the French attacks on Notre-Dame de Lorette. What's interesting for us as Canadians is that Canadians also passed through here during the attack on Vimy Ridge, and so if you'll follow me, I'll show you what I'm talking about.
So when you just stand here, you kind of look around and maybe you don't notice anything right away. But then when you look over here, oh yes, you see names of soldiers.
Yeah.
Somebody from Ottawa, somebody from the Princess Pat's.
I think a lot of the families who come here think we're going to give them an artifact or something tangible that they can take home with them. The fact that this is a name etched in the wall, I really didn't know how he was going to react.
But then, over here, Sandy, this is why we brought you here.
Oh, wow.
He stood right here where you're standing now.
98 years ago?
Yeah.
I can't believe this. I mean, when he was here, he could never have thought that a grandson he would never meet would be here almost 100 years later.
Although this was a grandfather that he never met, there was an immediate connection.
I'll have to go home and tell my mother.
There's hundreds and hundreds of names of Canadian soldiers who've etched their names into the walls around Vimy Ridge. And your grandfather is one of them.
It's amazing.
Guess you could say you're literally walking in his footsteps right now.
I guess I am.
But then we had more information to share with Sandy that would actually shed more light on his grandfather.
Well, we looked at his war diaries.
Yes.
And we think we know the possible date and when he did this.
The second siege battery was indeed engaged in the assault on Vimy Ridge. His unit moved back from the ridge to the Souchez area on the 13th, the day after the battle.
The war diary also states that the second siege battery left the town on April 25th. So there's a 2-week period where Ben Keeping was in the town of Souchez. This is when he etched his name into the wall of that old church.
Wondering what it was like for him to be here, what he was thinking about, whether, you know, he knew when the next battle would be.
At that moment, Sandy's wife Heather joins him, and both Wayne and I realized just how important this research is to the family.
You know, it's kind of funny, I never really knew my grandfather because he died before I was born. It sort of creates feelings that I never knew I had.
We have one last story to tell here on Vimy Ridge, and it will take us back into the underground war.
Out of 50+ names that we documented on the walls of the Goodman tunnel, we found one family that has now come over to France.
We're waiting for the arrival of Robert Rafflat.
He's the son of George Raflab, whose name we found down in the tunnel.
Gentlemen, how are you?
Now, he's arrived here with his second cousin, Jacqueline, and they have no clue what we have in store for you.
Nice to meet
And this is Wayne.
Hi there, how are you?
Hi.
Well, thank you so much for coming to Vimy Ridge.
Robert was very quick to tell us that he and his father really didn't talk much about the war. And in the limited conversations they did have, he never told them that he was actually here at Vimy.
Basically, Dad never mentioned hardly anything about the war to us as kids, no. And most of what I found out about his involvement was from my uncles, his brothers.
We have intentionally kept them in the dark and have told them nothing about what they will experience.
Was there something you wanted to show us about that cabin?
Nope, not at all. And don't get freaked.
As we approached the entrance to the Goodman subway, you could see that they were starting to get pretty nervous.
I want to take you under Vimy Ridge and show you something that proves that George was here in 1917.
Ready to go back 100 years into your family history?
Sure. Gotta go underground to do it.
You got it.
Excellent.
All right, let's get ready.
Okay.
We had two surprises for him. One was, of course, the signature on the wall below.
Just make sure you have good footing.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just go real slow.
But also a new set of research that sheds some light on his father's story at Vimy.
You know, Robert's the first son of a World War I vet ever to be in this tunnel.
On April 9th, 1917, when the attack was about to start, they started filtering soldiers down in here. And what we're doing is we're heading towards the frontline trenches.
So you can start to see things like, look at this right here. See other names here, look.
They were so intrigued.
Ross or a hose?
They started reading out the names and touching the wall.
D. Ross?
They were really leaving their last marks, if you will,
Yeah.
before they went into the Battle of Vimy Ridge.
Here's actual writing.
Yeah. So this is an incredible legacy left behind. And there's another little grouping of names here.
Herbie?
Yeah.
Hardy?
Oh, I see.
Oh, my goodness.
There's your father's signature.
116 Battalion, is that it?
You got it.
Yeah.
I really didn't know whether or not Robert or Jacqueline would have any kind of emotional connection to the signature.
My signature for a surname is almost identical.
I mean, Robert didn't even know his father was in Vimy.
How does it feel to be standing where he was 100 years ago?
The thing is, of all the relatives, I'm the only one. We're good.
But now it was time for the second surprise. The information that we uncovered about his father's war experience that he didn't know.
They were in a follow-up battalion that was pushing up ahead in no man's land. And he was fighting pretty much right above where we are right now.
I think he probably would have come through these tunnels to access the trenches that he was working in.
Yeah.
If your father was here, what would you tell him?
Probably that I now appreciate what he did. I'm more proud of him now. I thought you were going to show me a belt or a medal.
I guess you could say in many ways it's a lot better than a belt or a medal, because your dad did that with his own hands. It's been a gratifying experience to connect these families with remnants of the past. Though the battle ended nearly 100 years ago, through these artifacts, the story of Vimy Ridge lives on.